Let's find out how we can break video. We're going to go into depth in the video player today and use it in all sorts of weird and unusual ways. What this talk is about native video playback. So taking a video file and doing different things with it inside of Unity. That's not for you, that's fine. Feel free to go into a more relevant session. It's not going to go into video production, so I'm not going to talk to you how to do things in After Effects or Premiere. What we're going to do is, you've got a video file, you would like to use it somehow within Unity. What can you do? And there's more than you think. I'm just going to do a sound check. You can hear me okay up the back? All good? And so I'll go into a little bit of the history. I'll go into our new video player, what you can do, what you can't do. So my name is John Sietsma, and can anyone guess where I'm from? A lot of people say England. Australia, nice one. Yep. So I work for Unity out of Australia and New Zealand. So that's me. I'm also have this thing where I'm just an average-sized guy stuck in a world that's far too small for me. So I'm going to be doing a lot of demoing here. So excuse me while I bend over and do this. And I also realize I'm blocking the screen, so I'll try and move around and give you all a good view as well. All right. So video and Unity. If you think of video in Unity so far, you're probably thinking about cutscenes. You might be thinking about 360 video. Is that kind of what most people... Has anyone here put a video inside Unity before and done any video work in Unity? We've got a couple, so there's going to be more about the possibilities than anything else. So a lot of people think about video in terms of, I've got a rectangle on my screen, what can I do with it? We're going to push this a lot further today. We've got a whole hour just to do this. I've got 8 demos that are going to push the boundaries of video. And so what sort of things might we be looking at? If we want to go beyond a cutscene or a 360 video, well, why not put video into your world? Why not make it part of your world? Why not make it react to your world? So this is an example from Blade Runner, where you have a wall which is a huge video screen, and it's playing there, and it's interacting, light comes off it, and it's affecting smoke around it. This is just one example of how a video can actually be part of your game world. And the other classic example is, does anyone know what movie this is from? This is from Minority Report, one of the, where all ideas about science fiction come from. And so the monitor's not awesome anyway, so you can see here we have a video playing on the wall over here, which we kind of covered. And then this one here over here as well is also a video that's playing, and we can see we have some refraction there. You can see through, and it's part of the environment. So we get another example here of how you might do something with video in your world. But really, I'm going to go, again, beyond that. We're not just going to put it in the world. We're going to see what can I actually render video on inside Unity. Where can I do a video? Does anyone have an idea what I couldn't put video on? I could put a video onto a mesh, on any mesh. We're going to get into this. But one thing I probably can't do is 2D, on a 2D sprite. Well, let's see how far we can push it. So far, if you've been doing video in Unity at all, what you've been doing is you've been using our movie texture. Now, our movie texture was, I know this is on camera, but our movie texture was pretty bad. All right, so I'm going to say that straight up. It was a really bad solution for a number of reasons, and a lot of people ended up doing their own solution or buying something from the asset store. Why was it bad? Well, one is when you imported a video file, that video file came in as an asset, and that was it. There was no concept of having a video clip and a video player. You had one asset. That had a bunch of side effects, like if you wanted to play that video twice inside your game, you couldn't. It's the same asset, so you couldn't actually scrub through it. They'd have to be in sync. They were the same thing. And it had very limited settings as well. Here we go. We can set the anisotropic level. We can set the filter mode loop, and quality of 0.6760563. What does that mean? I don't know. Yeah. A couple of other disadvantages is that it had to be kept in streaming assets, so you couldn't actually have it in your scene. You had to load it up and play it. And it had a really limited API, so in terms of scrubbing, playing from a certain point, doing all that sort of stuff, you just couldn't do it. And yeah, this is one of the big ones. Not supported on mobile, which is one of the main targets you want to have video on, right? You want to have 360 video in your cardboard, you want to do all this sort of stuff. Couldn't do it. And so a lot of people, like I said, would buy something from the asset store and it would often be quite expensive. And so we thought we have to do something about this. We have to develop a new solution. It took a while, and eventually it came out in 5.6. Part of the reason why it took a while is Unity supports, 25 plus platforms now. So to get a good video solution that works on all those platforms, uses native codecs, works with the highest performance, you can imagine even just supporting Android, right? Imagine if you were to build a video player for Android and have it supported on all the different devices. Even that would be a tough job, right? So we worked on this, and eventually in 5.6 we released our video clip and video player component. And this solved some of the issues that we were talking about. So there's this concept when like an audio clip, you want to separate the data from how you're going to play it. When you bring a video in, you want to have a video clip. You want to think about the settings you're going to have on it, how it's going to be transcoded, and then you want something else that's going to play it for you. This is a lot like how an audio clip and an audio source work as well, or a texture input settings and a texture renderer work. You want to separate the two. So we have that now. When you bring a video clip in, you can adjust the settings on that, and then you can play it in your scene how you'd like. We have a lot more settings now. There's a lot more flexibility with what you do. And I'll go through some of those in a moment as well. The API is much better. You can pause, play, skip to a certain point. You can ask how many frames there are left. You can ask how many frames there are. You can do a lot more with it. And it works on all our platforms. And you get more control over audio. Audio is not baked into the clip anymore. You can now decide how you'd like to do your audio, whether you want to put it through a mixer, whether you want to put any audio effects on it, where you want the audio source to come from. And it can be rendered in lots of different ways. So the idea here is that we don't want to tell you how a video should be used. We want to give you just the ability to grab a video stream and do what you'd like with it. So we have a really flexible API and flexible way of rendering that means you can do all this crazy sort of stuff with it, some of which I will show you today. And here it is in graphical form. So you create your video outside, you bring it into Unity, that makes a video clip. You adjust the settings on your video clip, and then in your scene, you're going to have a video player, and you're going to decide how that's going to be played, and finally it gets rendered. Don't worry, I will show you examples of this. I'm not going to this is pretty much the last of my PowerPoint, and we'll get into demo time to give you lots of different examples of how you can actually do this yourself. So let's do that. Let's jump into Unity and try some things out. Does anyone even remember TVs like this? I'm not sure why this was chosen for the example. I mean, you have to get up to change the channel, unless you're 11 unless you're 11, of course, and you can just do it with your mind if you're from Stranger Things. So anyway, for some reason, we have this very old-fashioned TV that we want to play a video on. So this is kind of use case number one. I just want to put my video onto something within my game. And what do we enjoy watching? Well, I can't use Stranger Things because of copyright, so we're going to grab a wildlife video. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see. And I mentioned that, let me just move this out of the way. I mentioned that we've split importing the video to playing the video. So what do we get now when we import? We get all these different settings. I'm just going to run through these settings quickly so you know the possibilities, what you might choose for different situations. And I'll go through the play settings quickly as well so you know that sort of stuff. And then we'll feed those into different examples and take apart each of those settings so you know when you should use each setting in what situation. So first thing we have is the version we're using. We can drop down and use the bad old movie texture, but no one's going to do that. It's just in there in case you've already got a project that uses that, and we want to support that. We don't want to drop that straight away in case you're relying on it. So we're going to keep it as the video clip. Your video may have been authored with interlacing on it. Here you can deinterlace, choosing not or even deinterlacing. Now flipping horizontally and vertically, when would you want to do this? So you can change the setting here. Flipping vertically There are some platforms where the UV mapping is the other way around, so that might be a reason why you'd want to flip your video. You might just discover your video's playing upside down, or you might have been filming upside down. I don't really know. You might have been filming in a mirror, who knows. You can flip it either way, anyway, if that's what you need to do. But this is where it really gets interesting, when you want to transcode something. So you can do this externally. If you're in Premiere, you can resize your video clip. You can change its bitrate. You can do all that sort of stuff. But what you might want to do is when you're in Unity, you may want to do this per platform. So if you're on Android, you may want to have a half video size than when you're on the PC, for instance. So this is where you can start to override those settings. You can see I have all my platforms up the top there. I've got Android and iOS, Windows Store, and HTML. And I can change the dimensions, the codec I'm going to use. We support 2 codecs at the moment. Auto is probably the best setting, so we choose the best codec for you. If you choose the right codec for your platform, it means you're going to get nice hardware support as well, and it's going to be fast. So auto, unless you really know what you're doing, is the best setting there. The bitrate mode, I'm not sure, I don't like this one. This is, again, the magical, what does medium mean when you're doing bitrate? I'd much rather this was a number, but this is what we've got for the moment. So of course you can go to Premiere and choose a bitrate, or you can go in here and say Android is going to bump that to low, PC is going to be high, and have a look and play with those settings to get the right settings for you. So bitrate is the amount of bits over time. Spatial quality is the quality of your image itself. So you can basically take the bitrate down for an image rather than how much, rather than over time. So that's what spatial quality is. So you get all these settings there to fiddle around with the quality per platform. So we've got that, and I'm going to repeat this step here. I've got our wildlife documentary. If I drag it into the hierarchy, I get a game object. And what is this game object that I get? So this is the second part that I mentioned. We've looked at our video clip settings. This is how we play this. I can have as many of these video players as I want. I can have them point at the same video clip. There's no restriction here. This is just saying, hey, I want you to play a video in some sort of way. How should I do it? Let me know. By default, when I've dragged this in, it said, I know you want to play that video clip, the wildlife documentary. But what else? Like, the other thing I can do here is I can change this source to URL. Now, the most obvious use for this is to stream from your AWS server. If you had a bunch of video files and when you're making your mobile app, you don't want to package them all in. You can download them over time. But the other nice thing that it does is it lets you do a file URL. So what you can do is you can actually download video files to your device or to your PC and then play them locally. So you can keep swapping videos out. If you have a 360 app that you have a roster of videos that come every month, you can just pull them down, stick them in your resources folder or in your stream assets folder, and then play them there as well. So this one here, I'm going to stick with this video clip we have in our scene. Playing awake's kind of obvious. When I start the game, it plays. Otherwise, if I don't have that ticked, I've got to use some code there to say video clip play. Wait for first frame. It took me a while to wrap my head around this one. What does wait for first frame mean? Anyone have any ideas? To me, that would mean, I know, that would mean, yeah, I kind of think of the opposite. So it does what it says. If you have wait for first frame ticked, when you play the video, either when the scene starts or when you call play, it takes a little while to load up the first few frames of video, right? It takes a little while to initialize the video memory, to start streaming it in. It's going to not play the video straight away until everything is ready. Often that's not going to be noticeable for a user. It's going to be 2 frames or a very, very small period of time. But if you have video that's synced to something in your game or experience, and you need that video to be frame on, it needs to be exactly right. When you press play, that video better start playing straight away. Then you tick that off, and it won't wait at all. It's going to start playing straight away, but it may not render the first couple of frames. It may miss those, but just so it keeps everything in sync. And of course, we can loop and change the speed of our video. Again, I can't think of a really awesome use case for this unless you're doing a VCR emulation or something like that. But it's there. I'm going to pause for a moment here, and I've got the default thing. I've dragged the video clip in. It's created a game object. What happens when I press play? I'll make sure I've got maximize on play on. I get this. This is the default that Unity's chosen for me. I should swap sides every now and then so you guys can see over here the video, but what I've got is the video has gone behind everything. Now that's I don't know what the default should be. That seems reasonable to me. By default, Unity's going to play it full screen behind everything. So that brings us to this render mode drop down here. This is the most interesting part and the setting we're going to play with the most as we go through these demos, render mode. We can see by default the camera far plane is selected. I'm going to jump out there for people who don't know what a camera far plane and camera near plane is. If I have a look at my camera here in the scene, and I zoom in on it, we can see near the camera, you can see it's got this kind of, it's got a frustum, this shape here. This is the near plane of the camera. It's always going to be rendered before everything in your scene. If you've got something on the near plane, it's going to take the full screen, be in front of everything. When I look away, we can see this enormous box in the background. That's the camera's far plane. It's always going to be behind everything. So all we're saying here is it should be in front of everything or behind everything. So going back to our settings here, that's the first two ones. You can imagine the camera near plane is when you want to play a cutscene. Okay, I'm in a game, there's some action, something's about to happen, I want to pop a video up, I'm going to put it on the near plane, and it's going to be, the game's just going to disappear behind it, and I can keep playing. The next three are a little more interesting. So render texture, if I choose that, it means the video is not going to display directly, it's not going to go to the screen at all. It's going to go, instead of going to the screen, it's going to go to a texture, and I can use that texture then for different purposes. And we're going to go, I know that's a bit abstract, we're going to see some examples of that as we go along. And also fairly abstract, but we're going to use this right now, is material override. So material override, there's a terminology thing here. What does that mean? What we want to do here is we want to take, for this, using our TV example, where we're going to put something on TV, I want to, the material that's rendering the TV, I want to feed it the video file, right, instead of the texture that's applied there directly. So material override means override the texture on my material with the video stream. Let's make this happen. So this TV, it has a mesh here called a screen, and it's got just a standard shader on there, and there's just a grey colour. I'm going to go back to the video here. I'll take a little bit of time on this. When I choose material override, I now have a slot for a renderer. This is the renderer I want to do the override on. So I'm going to go and grab my TV screen, drag it into that slot, because my TV screen has a mesh renderer on it to render that mesh. So now it knows, the video player knows, okay, all my frames, I'm going to send them to the material on the TV screen instead of directly outputting them. And then I get this drop down here as well. So the TV screen has a standard shader on it. The standard shader is a whole bunch of texture slots, a whole bunch of things you can do with it. By default, they're going to drop down, and I can actually just direct this video to any of my texture slots I have in my shader. It makes sense here, that's going to be the main texture. And that's it. So if I press play, now our wildlife video goes to that screen mesh instead. That's a lot of dragging around and doing different things and a little bit to take in. There's a pretty good default for this. I'm actually going to delete this video I've just put in, and I'm going to get this wildlife video, and I'm just going to drag it onto the screen directly. And now let's look at what it's done. So I've dragged that wildlife video onto the mesh, the screen, the TV screen. By default, now what Unity's done is it's added the video player component, like we saw it do before with the game object, but it's set it up for me. It's set up material override, it's put the renderer in place, so I don't have to do anything. All I have to do is drag the video. You just drag a video clip onto any mesh, it will start rendering it for you. That's all you need to do, that's all you need to remember. If you take anything from this hour, that's it. And then, same deal, I can press play, and I've got that thing playing. Do I have audio on this? I should have some audio. I don't know if I've got some HDMI audio. No, obviously not. Okay, this will be an audio-less. So demo, I don't know, I kind of like this, we could watch it for a while. But no, I can share the video file with you later on if you'd really like to watch this documentary. We don't have time for it now, unfortunately. So that's the most basic use case of displaying something. I will show you what, one thing I didn't show you in the render mode is, I won't maximize it, is I did say, I'm going to drag that, I showed you when I dragged it in, remember by default, it went to the back. Just for completeness, I'm going to show you here, I'm changing the render mode from the far plane to the near plane, and that popped it up full screen for me, everything. I just wanted to show you that in action, even though I told you about it, just so you really get that concept down. So now that we've got the idea of displaying a video on any mesh in our game, what I've done so far is I've used a standard shader, so it's a pretty boring kind of output, but I can direct it to any shader I want, and that shader can do a whole bunch of different things. Let's have a look at some other things in this scene here. I'm going to press play, and we should get nice wildlife sounds if we're lucky, but no. So what have we got here? We've just got a hologram shader that's been downloaded from the asset store, and when I play the video, instead of playing it nice and clearly like this, it runs it through this shader and changes its appearance in all sorts of different ways. We're going to go through some examples here of how you can do chroma keying and a whole bunch of different effects with it like this. You can do a stylized effect, like a hologram, but you can also do things like color correction, real-time color correction or real-time chroma keying if you wanted to. So we have this one here. This here is showing some of the transparency here. We have a transparency setting on the player. So you can see we have a really nice effect with that. On a curved mesh with everyone's favorite motivational hero. And this shows a little bit, again, of different shader work. This is an additive shader, so I'm a multiply shader, sorry. So it's multiplying whatever the video color is. That's why it's quite dark. He will come back, I promise you. And then we have another one here, which is, again, showing the transparency on this circular mesh here. So now it's really up to you how you'd like to use video in your experience, which shader you'd like to use, how you'd like to display it. There we go. Let's step it up a little bit. One thing that people ask when you're playing a video, and I gave that example in the beginning about Blade Runner, about how they had a video on the side of a building. You expect that video to cast some light and to do things. So people often ask, hey, how can I get a video to interact with my environment? Something like this. There's audio. So we're in this lovely theatre here. Now I've got too much audio. That's all right, I'll control that, that's fine. Or I won't control it. We might bring it down a little bit. So we're in the theatre here. We're watching the Unity keynote, and we're playing the video, and can you see up on the roof and on the seats there? Can everyone see that? we're getting some color reflecting out. We've got some light there. So how would we do this? How do we kind of know what the video is doing and display the correct lighting for it? There's a couple of different ways to do this. I'm going to show you one, and I'm just going to tell you about the other one. The way this one is done is, so basically the problem here is I have a light in my scene. I would like to adjust the light, the color of the light, and the intensity of the light based on what's happening in the video frame. But that means I have to get the video buffer, add up all the pixels and average them out to find out what's going on, which obviously is a very, very expensive operation because there are so many pixels. Imagine the size of this video is, I think, 1024 by 768, so we've got, you know, millions of pixels we need to go through. So what we want to do is we want to get a much smaller texture and just take a guess at what the average luminance is like. The trick here in this one is there is another camera, if I can find it back, somewhere. Light camera. There is another camera. It's orthographic, and all it does is look at the screen. And I'll zoom in because I can see people leaning forward, peering at this. So here's a camera that's centered on the screen. It's orthographic, so it has no perspective. And instead of rendering to the screen, it's rendering to a render texture. So that's one of the things that cameras in Unity can do. They don't have to be part of the screen. You can render to a texture. So we're looking at the screen. Everything we're looking at is going to go to a render texture. This render texture here is 19 by 10 pixels big, right? So it's this tiny little. This is how we do our down sampling. This is just like a little trick. Say I've got this big buffer here that I'm displaying. I want to get a tiny one so I can do something with it. So when we render this camera, down sample it, and then it's easy enough then to just get all the pixels there and do the add up. If I was to be implementing this project, I would not necessarily do it this way because a camera render can be quite expensive. There's a bunch of stuff it does, like culling, custom culling, a whole bunch of stuff we don't need to do. So I would use, you could do like an on-post render and then use a graphics.blit. If you're happy with writing some code, you can just blit this in code and use a different material and blit from one size texture to another. But it's the same sort of principle. We're just going to blit to a different texture, get the contents of that texture, and adjust the light. And we get that nice little effect. When most people think of video, they probably think of this. Right? A video player with some controls. And I mean, I was talking about 360 video down before. Often you want to have interactivity in your video. You want to have hotspots. You want things to happen. You want to have some API control over it, basically. You want to have a way to pause it, to fast forward it, to make it loop. So this is just a standard Unity UI, and all it does is call into the API for our video player. So I can pause, I can scrub, I can make it go faster or slower. I could adjust the audio if there was some. Oh, there we go. So turn it up and down. And then I'll mute it again. And then interestingly, this last button here, well, everyone knows how this is done now, right? I just showed you this. This just changes the render mode to be on the near plane. Easy. Sorry, on the far plane, so we don't block off the UI controls. Anyway, it makes a full screen by changing the render mode. And so this example here is just to show you that you can implement this as well. There's all these API calls here. You can write some code. So if you're doing a 360 video or any sort of video that needs to be stopped, rewound, fast-forwarded, looped, whatever, you can do that. We even display the time here because you can get the total length of the clip, figure out what frame you're on, do some math to figure out where the slider should be. Same thing to do the loop around. All right. This next example is, well, how should I say it? I wouldn't advise you to do any of this, okay? I'm going to show it to you to further talk about the idea that we can put video on whatever we want and wherever we want and however we want. There may be some valid uses of this, and I'd be interested to hear some ideas of what people would like to do with this. But let's have a look. So what have I got in this scene? I have this plane. I've just got a plane here. It's got a texture on it. Let's have a look at the shader. So it's just using the standard shader here, and I've just got the albedo texture set to that. It's a simple setup. That's totally fine. But what I'd like to do, of course, is put some video on it, but not on the albedo. I want to keep that as it is. I want to put it into some other channels. So how do I do that? So far you've seen the material override. I'm not going to use that directly. We're going to use the render texture for this one. So this is the next rendering mode we haven't looked at yet. So going back to our familiar video player now, we have our video clip on, and the render mode is render texture. So now your target, this is going to be output to a render texture. I just went through that with cameras. You have the idea now of you can render something to a texture instead of to the screen. So we have this texture that we can do what we'd like with. What can we do with it? Well, I'm going to take it and drag it onto metallic. Let's do that one. So now I have this video that's coming in the metallic channel of my standard shader, which means as I move around, depending on the direction to the light, I'm going to get different reflectivity coming off this. Okay, so that's interesting. What else? I could put it in as the normal map. Now this one really makes no sense because the video is not encoded like a normal map, so the information really doesn't mean anything. Where it's black on the side, it just means the normal is getting blasted away and we don't get anything at all. But this one here works better. I put it into the height map channel. So I've got a video here with these rings, which is mainly black and white, and with a gradient. So where it's whiter, it's going to pop up a little bit more, and where it's black, it's not going to move at all. So I've put this in as a height map, and you can kind of see these rings going around, affecting the shader in real time. So when would you use this? People maybe in the place of a flipbook, right? So right now, people often do something like maybe bake out a fluid simulation from Houdini as a flipbook, and then use that in their shader. It would be interesting, I haven't done it, it would be interesting to encode that as a video and see if there's any performance improvements, especially if you can get some hardware compression or something to pull out. It would definitely be a smaller package that you download because the video would be compressed in a certain way, but that'd be something interesting to try out anyway. If you're only using a flipbook, I don't know, do some performance measurements on a video and see how that goes. Oh, I've got one more on here as well. So again, maybe not a practical use, but I just wanted to again show you the idea that you can put a video on anything. So I've just got the default particle system. If you drag a particle system in, and it's displaying the Atom video for some reason. I suppose it shows some of its capability because we're rendering to texture and using that, so it's fairly efficient. But I don't know why you'd want to do it. There is one thing. Last night, as you know, we actually make all our shaders available. You can download them and modify them. So I thought, I've got an idea for this. So I downloaded our shaders. This is the particle alpha blend shader. So I went and got the particle alpha blend shader and I changed one line. And fingers crossed, this may not work at all. Let's see. and I changed it to do screen space UVs instead of using the UVs of the quad itself. So now it kind of makes a little more sense, and you can actually see this. This may actually be a legitimate thing. You can imagine a particle system that's maybe being emitted from a mesh or being drawn into a mesh, kind of second sun style or something like that, and playing a video on top of that actually be a pretty cool effect. Especially if it was at the beginning of a game, or not during gameplay, but at some stage where you had a special key moment, projecting a video onto something like this would be pretty cool, I think. Maybe not with the default particle system. Maybe you could use a different particle system than that, but you kind of get what I mean. I promised you he'd make a comeback. So we have this idea that you can take a video in and you can write any shader you want and put any code with it you want, because that texture in that video stream is available to you. So one obvious thing you can do with this, or not obvious, one thing you can do with this is to write chroma keying for it. So why not take what's in the public domain and available to us and have some fun with it? I should mention that these shaders and code is written by Kajiro, who is an evangelist from our Japanese office. If you haven't come across him before, go check out his GitHub. It's like 600 repositories of awesomeness. Every time there's a new feature in Unity, he bends it in some way that you wouldn't think possible. Like this one, the video player. Oh, what can I do with that? I know, I'll do this. So what have we got? This is just the plain video. We have chroma key, and I'll show you some of the settings for this. So this one here is called ProcAmp. And we have brightness, contrast, keying, thresholding, trimming. You can scale and offset. That's how we got multiple videos at once, because you can scale and offset all these ones. Color you want to fade to, a whole bunch of different options. So now if I choose one randomly and start messing with it, you can see in the top right-hand corner, it starts changing that, because this is just changing shader properties. So, and this one at the bottom right is using this rendered texture technique that we're now all familiar with. This is the third time we've come across it. Put the video into a tiny little render texture and then put that on screen, and you'll get some free pixel art if you have it in point filtering rather than bilinear, right? So you get some, you know, come on, someone can make a game out of video that's pixel art. I'm sure someone can come up with an awesome concept for that, right? So if you want to do this sort of stuff, that code's available to you. Download it. I'll give you some links at the end. Let's take this a little bit further. This is also from Kajiro. I may as well just play it and then explain. It's probably easiest. So we have a few examples here. So this is the source video. That's just what it looks like. Again, we've got a shader here that just stylizes the result of the video. So like I said, video seems like a pretty simple concept, but then if you start to think about it a little bit, you can push it beyond what you would have thought originally. If you're thinking about cutscenes, you can do all sorts of things. Like I can imagine a cutscene that fades in, for instance, or burns out. Even simple effects like that would be really effective. This is one of my favorites. I'll show you the other one because that doesn't show up well on the screen. All right. So, taking the video up the top and voxelizing it in the shader. It's great to, it's cool to look at this in the scene and see what it actually looks like in 3D. So voxelizing it and then using a render just to just render the outlines of it. Again, all this code's available, so please pull it down and have a play around with it, because it's pretty cool. Okay, now this is when people think of video, this is probably, besides cutscenes, the second thing they think about is 360 video. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that as well. Now we've got down the principles of what you can do with this video player and how you can mess around with it. Let's look at how you might do 360 video. There's two techniques that we can use. One is to get the video and display it on a sphere, and the other one is to display it on the skybox. I'm going to go through both of those. What I have here in my scene is just a sphere with a checkerboard pattern on it. This does have a different shader on it. This has a 360 rectangular shader, but I can also put a standard shader on there as well. It just wraps it slightly differently. So with a sphere, we expect when you take your 360 video for it to be an equirectangular projection, and that really means latitude and longitude. I suppose if you took a world map, that's latitude and longitude, and stretched it out flat, that's the sort of projection we want to do, and it's the default that most video recorders do anyway. It's the easiest one for us to wrap back around a sphere. So here's a scene. I've got a sphere. I've got a little script. Let me select the main camera first. When I move my mouse, it just moves the camera around on the spot. The camera is in the center of the sphere. So that's the setup. So what I want to do now is put a video on the sphere. And you all know how that's done now, right? Because I've showed you a number of times. What should I do? I'm not going to answer for you. Come on, someone tell me what I should do. What's that? Drag it on. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to get this beach video here, drag it onto the sphere. And now I'll play this in full screen here so you can see it in action. And there we go. I'm looking around. You can see the waves are actually coming in and out. I'm in a 360 video. It looks pretty good. One thing I would tell you though, don't use Unity's default sphere. It pinches at the bottom in your 360 video. It's actually not a great sphere by default. If you're going to do 360 video, don't just go create 3D object sphere. In this case, what I'm doing is, or I was doing, yeah, in this case, what I'm doing is, where is the renderer? I'm using an octahedron sphere. This is just a different way to generate a sphere. You can download one of these. So by default, when we think about a sphere, we often do a latitude and longitude sphere. It pinches at the top and the bottom, and so you get more verts at the top and more verts at the bottom. Doesn't actually mean it pinches the texture, but it's not necessarily the most efficient way to render. An octahedron sphere, you start off with a square, and you shrink it into a circle, and so you actually get a better spread of verts around your sphere. So if you're going to do some 360 video, I recommend hunt down one of those spheres. There's loads of them free online, and use that in your project instead. So in this one here, that's what that mesh looks like. It's probably far too many verts for this application, but hey. So why would I use a sphere? Well, it's in the world, so this is one nice thing about it. It's in 3D, so I can put things in front of it, I can put things behind it. There's some really cool demos we've done recently of, say, having a beach scene like this and actually flying some animated seagulls over the top or adding some other elements to your 360 video. It doesn't always have to be flat. The other thing you can do with a sphere is you could have two spheres. You could have one on the inside, which has some transparency, one on the outside. That means you can actually use some occlusion. You can actually move things behind or in front of those two, or at least have two different video cycles playing at different times, looping at different times. Maybe you have an ambient track on the outside that has a shorter loop and a longer loop on the inside where you have characters walking around. So having something inside the world, like a sphere, gives you a little more possibilities for interaction within your world. You can also put buttons on this, you can put hotspots on it, and you can line them up with your video. And then, so for instance, I did a demo once with a school that did a school walkthrough. They went out with their Ricoh feeder, they took a bunch of videos, and then by hand, they just put a UI button, and I had a gaze control. And so they put it next to the door of their video, and then when you looked at it for 2 seconds, then your video would change and you'd be out in the hall. And it's the most easy afternoon project you can do with a school to create a school walkthrough. That's one of the things you can do with a sphere. The second method is a skybox. So why would I use a skybox? Skybox is always behind everything. So if you don't want things to interact, if you don't want objects to float, if you don't want your seagulls to float and then suddenly disappear because they've got to the edge of your sphere, that's when you want to use a skybox. Let's have a look at this. So a skybox is a cube texture that is rendered into your world. It's rendered after or before everything, but it's rendered differently, so it's always behind everything. So for instance, I have a skybox texture somewhere here. Yeah, it's not there. Anyway, let's have a look at this skybox material. So we have provided, so a skybox is often just a static image you drag in that just gives you a sense of depth to your scene, you know, as you go up to infinity. You can also, it's just a shader. So we've been learning a lot about shaders today. Shader you can do anything you want with. So we can animate this. You can animate it. You can animate a skybox, do what you like with it. We can also play a video on it. So this is what we're going to do today. And again, I'll give you a link. We've got shaders for you to do this. If you want to do video on your skybox, you can do that. So what I have here is my skybox material, and I've got this special shader here, skybox panoramic. And I get to here to choose what sort of mapping I have, whether it's a cube that's been rolled out, like a cube map, or whether I have a latitude and longitude, which is this equirectangular projection. This skybox here is rendering a render texture. You guys know the drill by now. We've got a render texture. So we're going to tie this back to our video player. We're going to have this down by the end. We're going to do it. Video clip. We're playing the beach scene that's all familiar to us now. I'm rendering to a render texture. That render texture is going to, well, I'm using render mode render texture. That's going to a render texture. That goes into my skybox material. So and voila. So same effect, but I don't have the sphere in the scene anymore. I disabled that. This is just running on my skybox. Okay, one more demo, and then we can do some questions and talk about stuff. Who has heard of Timeline? Our new feature, Timeline. We've got one. Yes, my fans down in the front row know all about it. So Timeline's a new feature we have that, especially if you're doing video production, is actually really useful to you. It lets you get assets and lay them out on a sequence of time. If you've used Director or Premiere or any of those sorts of things, there's a common concept where you have a timeline, you lay things out on it. We have one here as well. Let me make that big for a moment. So this is a timeline. We have a video script playable track up the top, which is going to play some video for us. We have a camera track, which is going to cut a camera for us and put it in a certain position. And then we have some animation tracks as well, which are going to do some things. I'll show you this in a moment. But if you haven't used Timeline, then this is the tool for you, because you can put animations on it, you can put audio on it, and you can imagine how you have a great creative control here when you're in your scene and you can just drop some audio on where you want it to be, and you don't have to go get a coder to come in and write some code to make something happen when you want it to happen. Let's play this interaction, and then I'll show you how this is working in the timeline. So I have a camera here around this robot guy, and I can move over towards, we're doing real dystopian future here today, but I'm walking over to here, I'm in this hotspot. I can press a key, notice the camera cut, notice that my animation's not happening. Anyway, we're playing some videos now on our mesh with our special renderer. We've got Adam there looking very washed out. And then eventually, We'll watch him wake up and freak out. And then at the end, we're going to play our spinning Unity logo. So this thing, when you're doing video, you often want to play different clips. So in our timeline down the bottom here, I have 3 clips here. And I can scrub through them. So the first one I have is this countdown timer. Then Adam plays. And then finally, I have the Unity trailing logo come up. And the last frame of that gets held on the video until I'm done. So this track here is an experimental one we're working on. Again, the code's available for you if you want to download this and play video on a timeline. So you can play the video when you'd like. And you can imagine all the techniques I've just showed you. Now you get the ability to mix that with, rather than having to write some code to say video.play, you can drop this on and make the video just play whenever you want. And that can be in response to going through a trigger zone, or when a scene starts, or whenever you'd like. I promised links, didn't I? If you just search for Kajiro GitHub, you would find this and do that. I'll get out of the way here for people down this side. So this is the video player effects. This is the voxelizer one that we showed you. ProcAmp was the one that did the chroma keying and lets you adjust temperature and saturation and all that sort of stuff in real time. And then lastly, that's a bit of a long link. I probably should have bit.ly'd it. On our GitHub, we have this skybox panoramic shader, so you can download that skybox shader. So I hope that gives you some idea of some of the possibilities of what video can be beyond a full-screen cutscene or a 360 video, and some ideas for what you might make in the future. So thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? It has to just be one that's understood by those codecs. We will, yeah, so MP4 or whatever would be fine. Yep. Yes. I totally did not even show you the audio options for video, did I? So feel free to go if you want, but I totally missed this. Audio. I'm going to skip back to the beginning scene. So the question was about, hey, what about 360 audio? How do we do that? And by the way, I'm surprised no one asked me about stereoscopic video, because that's the first question I usually get. So if I've got this TV and this screen here, I will just drag this video back on again real quick. Do we have audio going, by the way, AV people? Well, that's been thought about. Let's have a look at the options here. The last one down the bottom here is audio. There's a direct mode, which is only supported on some platforms, or there's an audio source. So this is just a standard Unity audio source. So what I can do here is I'm going to pop out, and I'm just going to, on the TV, there's already an audio source on the TV. So I can go to my video player, drop that into the audio source. And then I have options of audio that you'd usually get within Unity in terms of reverb and looping and volume and pitch and all that kind of stuff. But you also get access to a mixer as well. So if I have a look at that mixer, then I get different options there for mixing and leveling and FX and all that kind of stuff. So you just get your video audio piped out to our mixer or our audio source and do what you usually do in any game. Does that answer the question? Yes, so we have, so there's a built-in spatializer as well. So maybe afterwards I'll show you where the settings are for that. Any remaining questions? While the video is playing, can we load the next level in the background? Yes, you can. So it depends on how you're loading your video, whether you're downloading it from the internet or whatever. But yes, you can do an additive scene load in the background while you're playing a video, and that'd be a great way to transition from one scene to another. Yeah. Yes, can you use asset bundles? Yes, you can. So you can just have it direct link into it, but you saw there's a file resource there as well. So you could just... Yeah, so you'd download an asset bundle and you'd load up that specific resource and then just assign, you'd have to use some code to assign the clip to the video player. Yeah. So performance, question about performance on video, it's going to depend on platform. We just use whatever the native video playback is for a platform. So on iOS, it's going to be the movie texture class, whatever it is, I can't remember. And we have, if a platform has hardware support for video or audio decoding, then we will use that. So it's as efficient as the native playback will be. That's it? All right, thank you so much for coming along.